Back live tonight on In Focus. Home Affairs has granted relief to foreign applicants of long-term visas and waivers. The new date extension now is December 31st. The department says the backlog dates back to 2016 due to lack of personnel expected to process these applications. And for more on this, we're joined now by Dr. Vusumuzi Sibanda of the African Diaspora Global Network. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. In a circular that was issued sometime last year, the Department of Home Affairs announced these temporary measures in respect of foreign nationals in light of a backlog experienced in processing outcomes on waiver applications and visa applications. Seems they have not gotten a handle on that particular situation of the backlogs. Why? Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you very much for inviting me. Look, it is very sad because, this extension, are practically showing that the Department of Home Affairs is in ICU, and it has been for a very long period of time because we've got people that have, applied for permanent residence, that have spousal, visas, that have got work visas and so forth since 2019, and some even before that, where basically we've got the department saying before 2014, some documents went missing because, before that they were not computerized, they had, manual files. Now, this extension to a lot of people might appear as if, it's a good and generous gesture. But unfortunately, what people don't realize and might not be aware of is that, as the directive says, the people that, are awaiting these outcomes, it means they cannot do anything. So you've got a person who legitimately expects an outcome within either 8 weeks or 8 months, waiting for 5 years. And if that person, for example, is somebody that is supposed to be a breadwinner or who's supposed to be working, it means they cannot work. They're supposed to be studying or studying. They cannot do anything. They cannot even move or get out of the country, because if you go out of the country, then you're supposed to come back either on a temporary visa, and if you're in a country that you're supposed to apply for a visa, apply for another visa. So it's something that is very, very crippling. And we know that the minister last year said they were employing about 10,000 graduates, and we thought this was going to better the situation. But one needs, and the question begs, that says, but what exactly is wrong at the Department of Home Affairs?
Yeah. So administratively, what does this mean? I know it says those who already have pending applications, maybe to extend their visas, this applies to them. So in other words, this temporary extension will apply, which means their current visa status is still active. But what does it mean for those who don't have a current visa, maybe who are applying for a long-term visa?
Well, if somebody does not have, it can only imply and it can only tell a person that is yet to apply that the adjudication of their visa is going to take place in another 3, 4, or 5 years to come, because if visas that have been applied for or waivers that have been applied for in the last 2, 3, or 5 years have not yet been decided on, so it means the new ones that are coming, anyone that wants to apply might as well be rest assured that they are not going to have an outcome anytime soon. So the kind of situation that you have is basically that, anybody that wants to apply for a new visa at this particular stage, they can go ahead and apply. And by the way, that statement is almost as silent as you can say anything, because if a person is within the country and you have made an application, for a particular status and the department has not given you an outcome, now what that means is basically that if you are still in the country, there is virtually nothing you cannot be arrested for being unlawfully in the country because you've got the VFS, receipt that proves that, you've made an application. So that statement or that directive is merely speaking the obvious, something that is mute, that is already known. But, it does not even help someone in the workplace, someone who has been in the workplace, because an employer wants a visa stuck in somebody's passport, not a directive.
Is this a security risk?
Well, it could be. Because look, in a huge way, what it means is that you can have, people that have got, especially since it's been over 5 years in some cases, these VFS receipts, they don't last for a very long period of time. They end up becoming invisible, and you can start to have, people coming up with, fake, receipts instead of having proper permits, because it's not something that's stuck in the passport. So all of a sudden, we might start having a lot of bogus, visas because of people that are frustrated or people that are also ordinarily criminal that are taking advantage of the fact that the department is ineffective and is not issuing, visas. So you can have a lot of people walking around and saying, oh, well, but look, I've got this receipt here. That means that I'm still waiting for my, visa. In the meantime, the visa is manufactured at some backdoor. It's a very huge security risk indeed.
Yeah. Would this have maybe an unintended consequence of having restrictions on some individuals who might require port of entry visas as they get to the border in South Africa and want to be readmitted?
Well, yes. I mean, those, for example, that come from countries that require visas, if somebody has an emergency and they have to go out of the country, remember, this means that a person who has come into the country and has been waiting for 3 or so many years, for a particular visa, and there is an emergency, they want to go back to their country, it means they've got to start the whole process again. If they are going back, to their country, which requires a visa, they'll have to apply for a visa for entry, and they might be regarded as a person that has abandoned their application. If it's somebody that's coming from a country, that does not require a visa, they still have to get to the border and still have to get, a visa, at a port of entry that requires them to come in. And for that particular reason, what it means is they'll have to be subjected again to those, processes which they ordinarily would not have been had they been given, their visa, in time. So yes, I mean, it creates a very, serious situation because some people don't necessarily want to stay in South Africa, but they also want to visit other countries. But they do not have a valid status anywhere that would allow them to travel to any other country. So the person has become some form of, a person who's held in ransom by the country and by the Department of Home Affairs because they cannot do anything, until the department, basically, makes that decision. So it looks like there is a silent, moratorium on, these issuings of these visas, and that has got a consequence of basically, putting people into, prejudicing the applicants, because now it means their lives are put on hold. And what that means is that they cannot do anything else. And that forces some of these people to then abandon or say, look, but this is not helping. But you cannot abandon, for example, if you're on a work or business visa or study visa and your studies are to be carried out in South Africa. But you can only now be confined, to South Africa.
Now, how confident are you about the process of acquiring additional personnel? I mean, it seems the department is quite confident that the backlog could be cleared very quickly. In fact, what is 15 months' time that they're saying here, if they are able to get the additional personnel?
Well, look, we've had this situation, well before, COVID. And we know that sometime last year, the minister went up, on media and said, he's employed 10,000 more graduates to help, clear the backlog. And we know that this also ties, together with the Zimbabwe exemption permits, where even a committee had to be established, to try and expedite this. But we have not seen any outcome, in those areas. So we actually are realizing that the 10,000 additional graduates that were brought in there, it has not alleviated, the problem that we have. And we do not understand, and we may not know that, does this mean that the department lost more personnel during, COVID, maybe more people passed on, or what exactly happened? Because what is it that has changed that causes this kind of backlog is the question that begs to be answered, and asked and answered. Because the situation is such that there must be something so tragic, something so huge and tremendous that has caused such a backlog, because the department still has got duties, civic duties that it's got to do, for its citizens and then the people that are coming in. Now, if you've got such a backlog, one would want to understand why is that happening. But we do not have an answer except that, that it will clear up soon. So there is no personnel, in my view, that can change that. But this might have something to do with, some policy or, the leadership at the department.
Yeah. According to the Deputy Minister at Home Affairs, these delays will not have direct harm on investment because, according to him, he says the backlog of the applications for permanent and temporary residence visas were mainly by spouses and family members, which really did not affect the economy or the investment.
That is not true, because remember, I think about 2 months back, we had about an application. I think it was 53 or over 53, business people that were coming from, Europe that, had been waiting for their business permits that had not come out. So if you've got somebody that is looking at South Africa as a destination where they want to come and invest their money and do business, they are not likely to come in if they know that people that have applied for such business permits or that want to bring in foreign direct investment into the country, they know that, the permit, will take forever to be decided upon. They'll have to find another country which has got more, friendlier and more quicker means of handling, their applications and ensuring that they may invest their money and start working on it. So that would be completely untrue to say that does not have, a direct, because the implication is that, there is a deliberate, slowdown on spousal permits rather than business. But that is not true, because we had a case recently towards the end of last year that dealt with business people that have been in the country for so long and their visas have not been decided upon. So that statement is completely untrue.
So one of the reforms, structural reforms that have been suggested for a while now is the ease of access to visas, and that is the South Africa e-visa regime. I mean, is there commitment and a seriousness towards that particular reform?
Well, look, the issue is basically that even if South Africa has an e-visa, but behind the e-visa, there is people that will have to do their adjudication and probably, make sure that, these are processed and, people are given electronically without having to go physically, at these particular places. So the issue is not that, these centers that process and give out visas and, receive the applications are overcrowded. And as a result, that's why there is a delay. The issue is that the Department of Home Affairs itself, which does not handle, the issuing and, of the people physically or the receiving, is having a problem. So it means that the department itself is the one that has got to be dealt with. So the issue of the e-visa is not likely to, help, alleviate this particular problem. The issue is we need to look closely at what is happening at the department that is causing these particular delays, because we are assuming that the e-visa is something that is going to have decisions made by the computer, to say, okay, this person qualifies or not. And I'm not sure that exactly that's what it is intended at, because at the end of the day, there are panels and groups of people that still have to make those decisions, and that's where the problem lies.
All right, Dr. Vusumuzi, Sibanda, appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on tonight from the African Diaspora Global Network. What is obvious at this particular point and what it seems to be revealed from this note from the Department of Home Affairs is that the backlog still remains and it still remains quite significant at this point. We did reach out to the Department of Home Affairs, and they do promise to get back to us. We'll probably have this conversation at a later stage or maybe later in the week.